Kia ora tātou. If we can please make our way to our seats so we can get this afternoon's sessions underway, that'd be helpful. Perhaps if we get those doors closed, then that might help get people in. Thank you. Kia ora tātou. Well, that's one way of getting you all to be quiet. Go quick, grab some chocolate, come in. We'll have another break in around about 45 minutes' time. But our next speaker is here and she is waiting. Our next keynote speaker is Frances Valintine, founder and board director of academyEX. For over 25 years, Frances has been dedicated to shifting education and business practice to develop the capabilities, knowledge, and mindset needed to respond to the future of work, changing societal expectations, and the protection of the planet. Frances sits on the board of Watercare and is a selection advisor to EHF, which is the Edmund Hillary Foundation, a judge on the High Tech Awards and the national expert for the Global World Summit Awards. Frances is also a mentor to a number of global female technology leaders and a director to On Being Bold, an initiative to support and encourage emerging female leaders and female students to aim high and dream big. Frances is also on the board of trustees for the University of Silicon Valley. I've had the opportunity to sit one-on-one with Frances, and I have no doubt the value that every single person in this room will get from her presentation. Please, can you make welcome Frances Valintine.
Tēnā koutou katoa. It's a great privilege to be here, and I know that it's a long day. When you get the afternoon session, you're always up going, okay, make this lively. And so the topic of sport and AI was not one you'd normally put together. In fact, if you put a continuum, you'd probably put them at opposite ends. So it got me thinking, as someone who has lived in the space of emerging technologies, particularly AI, over the last 15 years, this is really a moment in time for me when you realise that sports is now thinking about the impact of a technology so profound that sectors across the world are wondering what comes next. So I'm going to do something that I've never done, ever, speaking at an event. They say don't work with children and animals. I'm going to try speaking to AI. I want to do this. I am going to talk about conversational AI during my talk, but I'm going to start with it to talk about how this is coming at us so profoundly quickly. So here goes. Connecting. Hi, I've just moved to Auckland. I have 2 children. My 7-year-old daughter doesn't know what sport to play. We live in Epsom. Do you have any ideas about what sport she would be good at? She likes teams. She likes contact, but not too much. And we don't want to travel too far. What do you recommend?
Epsom has some great local sports options for your daughter. Given her preferences, she might enjoy netball or soccer. Both are team sports with some contact, but not too much. And they are popular in the area. The Auckland Netball Centre and local soccer clubs like Central United FC have programs for young children and are conveniently located. These could be fun and engaging for her.
Do they have a good uniform?
Yes, both netball and soccer clubs in Auckland typically have well-designed uniforms that children enjoy wearing. The uniforms are usually comfortable, practical, and stylish, making the kids feel part of a team. You can check with the specific clubs like Auckland Netball Centre and Central United FC for details on their uniforms.
Just a moment though, I don't like getting cold in winter, so if I have to watch my daughter play sport, what sport would you recommend? Am I going to get cold playing or watching my daughter?
Given Auckland's mild winters, you might still feel chilly watching outdoor sports. If staying warm is a priority, you might consider indoor sports for your daughter. like basketball or indoor netball. Both sports.
I'll leave it there. Now, to be fair, I would never, one, I don't live in Epsom, I don't have a young daughter, and I would be happy to be at the sideline. But the reason I wanted to showcase that is conversational AI, while it's still in its very infancy, it is only a matter of weeks before we have no delay at all. So this delay you're experiencing right now is a momentary blip in the evolution. And actually very soon, our basically co-worker, our sidekick, for every one of us with a mobile phone will have their AI on all the time. Right, so let's just jump back into the topic. I want to show the power of AI, not in sports, but just more broadly. I'm going to go macro, micro, and mix it all up. But I want to start with music because it always connects. And just to give you an idea, here is just a single tool that I used called Suno. Suno is just a song maker. Now, if you imagine sitting down a few years ago and saying, I think we need a big rah-rah anthem for our tournament that's coming up this weekend. First of all, your board, your team would turn around saying, this weekend you want a song by this weekend. That's never going to happen. Secondly, if you did want a song, you'd plan months in advance. You'd find musicians, you'd find songwriters, you'd find someone who can actually bring it together and actually then record it. Someone has to, check the lyrics, it has to make sure this all works, and then test it. Now, I can do the same thing with a very simple tool like this, which, if you're excited by what you hear, you can actually create your own ones for free, up to, I think, about 10 songs. So I thought, well, why not do one for this conference? Let's create a song that is around getting a lot of sports people together, and let's make a bit of an anthem. And so, by a very simple written prompt, talking about what I want, it created a song with lyrics, 8 seconds. Let's push this right up. I want you to sing along, Emo. Ready? One more round. Here we go. One more time. Right. How many of you wrote down Suno and said this is this weekend's activity? But this is a great illustration of how fast things are changing. There was a time not long ago that we thought the creative sector would not be impacted in anywhere near the ways that other sectors would be, because we thought that we were special little butterflies, that only the creative genius could put together the talent that you'd need to create a piece of music, a piece of art, a photography or a photograph, an animation, a game. And now that whole sector has been turned upside down. And so where we are right now is this exponential shift. And when we've talked exponential before, we've never talked anything like this. We've talked about it with, some people understand things like the Moore's law, the law of accelerating return as computation increases and potential of technology changes over time. But this is not it. This is on a whole different level. And we need to look into the future with what is possible today, but put some very, very short horizons into the future. This is not a 5, a 10, a 15-year horizon. When we talk to people who really specialize in AI, they're talking about the end of this year, the end of next year. They're talking in these macro, shrunken down to micro timeframes. And actually, this is really something that every sector is grappling with. Why? So I put it down to 4 key reasons. The disruption does things better, faster, cheaper. And unfortunately, no matter how much we want to argue that, no matter how much we want to say as a lawyer, I do the job better, which therefore, the scarcity model, you can continue to pay me a lot of money for what I do, when a contract can be written in literally seconds by a well-informed large language model. For the person who says, oh, but I create something that's definitely unique that nobody else can do. I'm a journalist and I write in a style that no one else has ever cracked. The reality is, this is the world we're in, where we're looking at economic kind of reinvention, productivity gains, reducing costs, trying to fill the gap where people cannot be found or where people are not efficient. And it sounds like we're bringing it down to the lowest common denominator, and in some ways we are. But to put our heads in the sand and say this is not happening would be the worst thing that any one of us could do. It was great to see when I walked in, you were talking about demographics. And I'm sure you had many conversations around that we are shifting so dramatically. The birth rate here in Aotearoa has dropped by 25% in 10 years. The only people who are having replacement rate of babies around the 2.2 babies per person in our Māori Pacific communities, thank goodness. But actually, as we go forward, we're going to have an enormous aged population post-retirement and a very small tax base. And that also means a very small space of group of people, a base for education, for sports, for leadership, for the opportunities to take us into the future. So how are we going to augment things to make sure the people who we do have, that we give them every chance of success, every chance to lead and to thrive, so that they can be anything they wish in the future? The democratisation of a system. It wasn't that long ago that I relied on the Encyclopedia Britannica to find the information I needed, or the school library. And now education has been completely democratised. You can be informed within seconds through any search, through any access to publications, and actually in most cases it's free. We even have significant universities around the world offering free papers, free programs. You have whole countries trying to attract graduate students, places like Norway and parts of Europe, who are saying, come to our country and all education is free, because they're identifying the need for more young people who are highly skilled today for tomorrow. And then we've also got influence that we no longer hold necessarily as teachers, as parents, as leaders, because the influence is held by peers, by literally influencers on social media, by others around us, by what we see, what we feel, and what we experience. So all of these playing together mean that sport is now sort of under a threat of the unknown. Now I should admit, all these images have been created by AI, so it's an imagined large language model view of a sport. So if you're seeing weird kind of extra fingers, it's not bad photography. But we also have this ethnic diversity that we have, and as we're trying also to attract great talent into this country, we also need to understand they bring their own sports, their own desires, their own ways of doing things. So it's not just the kind of the centric kind of view we've had for many years. And that's brought closer by some of the largest social media platforms are driven by individuals and people who are out in the sporting fraternity who are promoting their sport, which is growing interest by those here with a geographic divide. And if you don't spend time on TikTok, I thought I'd just bring just a single TikTok video, just the first one I found last night when I was looking. So here's just an example of the type of thing that is consuming young people. Now, TikTok overall is consuming most amount of time across young people globally. On average, they spend 8 hours a day. You think about it, 8 hours a day on, if it's not TikTok, it's going to be Instagram or one of the others, but TikTok is definitely. So here's just a short little video of the sort of thing that they're watching. I'm going to watch to the end. Now you might go, well, how many people possibly could watch that? Turns out 22.1 million. We're competing for eyeballs. The instant gratification of the type of streaming media, the relatability, seeing yourself in a group, finding your tribe, laughing alongside them. These are really powerful, really emotive ways of thinking. So you may go, I don't see the relevance, I don't see the humor, I don't see why that's in any way sticky and wants people to go back and forward it. But if you're part of a group and you find that connection, it suddenly becomes very powerful. We also have esports. And I have to say, for me, a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, my son, who was studying at the time, came to me and said, I have a new job during study. So what is it? He said, I'm an esports director. So what's an esports director? And he still continues to this day, because he loves it, on top of his job. He sits in the Sky Tower and he directs the esport feeds that come into the country at night. And so these are games where there are sometimes tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people watching, backing their team, their esports team playing a computer game. These are crowds that we'd wish for in mainstream sports. And yet they manage to coordinate and connect these vast array of young people, particularly, to watch these sports. We also have the social media I talked about, and of course, just the power of streaming media, the Netflix kind of time, and actually how much of our eyeballs are drawn to screens, which is one of the things I'm very excited about with conversational AI, because I think for the first time we can actually engage with technology without looking at it, and actually becomes much more organic and conversational than it has been. We have our own New Zealand esports teams, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this, and we have our All Blacks and the esports team. We have connections that are bringing sports and esports closer together all the time. And so I think there's just some of the areas where we need to get closer to understand what does it look like to be involved with esports in New Zealand as a sporting organisation. Is there an overlap? And if it is, what does that look like? Because these are not binary. There's not yes and no to sports, esports. It's the same people looking at ways of engaging with others. And most of this is a sense of community. The reason we get together, we play sports, often is the connection to others, in the same way that computer games and esports does the same thing. But going back to AI, I just want to talk about where it's starting to impact on sports and in business. First of all, you need to understand, as I mentioned at the beginning, just how fast this is moving. If you think back to the days of the internet, first of all, to have the internet work, you had to have lines to your home, you had to have a big beige box sitting on your desk, the modem, we all know that noise, right? We had to kick the kids off the line so you could actually be on the computer and dial up and look at Ask Jeeves. All of those things had to happen, and then you had to wait while the pages loaded. It took decades for people to get fully online, and we had a buffer around 15 years from the beginning of the very first e-commerce sort of blow up to when it became every business had a website. The iPhone in 2008 was the first time we had a portable website, a portable phone, and the idea that an app could be attached to a phone, and the phone almost became irrelevant as something to talk to or talk on, but it was a connection through the extension of apps. The store, the marketplace became the way we used our phone. But that really doesn't compare to when, back in November in 2022, when OpenAI first turned on the generative AI and ChatGPT. The uptake of that has never been seen in any other technology. And if you go back in time, you'll see, like Spotify, it took 11 years to get to 100 million users. Most of them take years and years, and actually TikTok, it took 9 months. And yet the same was achieved in just 2 months. And so now we have just under 2 billion people in the world using ChatGPT. Now, this uptake is something that, because it's getting cheaper every moment, I still have a paid version. I'm paying my $20 a month because of my large language models, but now the new 4.0 that's just come out, which will be the conversational version as well, is free. You don't need lines, a modem, a computer. You don't need a new phone. All you need is the ability to connect. And of course, most of the world today does have connection. And a mobile phone. So the rate of adoption from here is not limited like the internet, which is still quite clunky on a mobile phone for many people. Once it moves into the space fully of conversational and also the camera, we'll see a very different world. Just to understand what generative AI is, it's a narrow field, but it does a lot. So it is a deep learning model. So we've talked about, you may have heard of things like computer vision or machine learning. There's these multiple different types of AI. Generative AI is basically predicting what naturally would come next. If I said pet, it might say shop. You know, if you said eye, it might say ball. It thinks about what comes next. If it's in an image, it thinks about what pixel would most likely sit next to the pixel that's already there. If it's in a song, it thinks about what music, which note, which lyric naturally would sit, based upon a large, well, enormous language model. So it can, at the moment, create anything around text and images, video. It can create anything that is in the written word, but increasingly formulas. It can write scripts, both technical scripts and creative scripts. It can create images based upon things you submit and tweak it. It can create completely from scratch. There's really no limitation in terms of that type of model. It's growing so fast and we're using so much of this. All of the large language models, whether you're a Google, you're a Microsoft, whether you're OpenAI, everybody's just hungry to get more data. And that's what's been happening for the last 10 years. It's been scraping the internet for everything that's online, whether it be the intranet, the internet, the YouTube account, the lyrics of a song, whether it be anything they can find at all that's not protected, which is most of the internet except for down in the dark web. So much so that now we imagine about 90% of all content online will be created by a generative AI within actually the end of next year. Already, we're seeing it well over 70%. So much of it, the number of queries happening every single day and the amount of copy that has been written is replacing just by the sheer volume. It's a volume game. It also works things out which we don't completely know. There is a bit of a black box of all generative AI. And so it's taught on English. It started with English only and yet speaks 95 languages and increasing. It was taught in terms of computer language, development tools, using Python, but actually self-taught multiple other languages. And the self-teaching is what we're starting to see. So I thought I'd take a sporting analogy. So here is a quick example of someone who decided to train some AI to play football. So when they first got the characters were truly stupid. They had no idea what a ball is, they don't know the rules of the game, and so they're teaching basically a total novices, and then we'll see how they get on. Can I have volume, please?
Teaches its virtual characters to move, play football, /soccer, and so much more. Now, when reading this paper, I expected that they would learn the basics, but what happened afterwards, I did not expect at all. They also learned some absolutely amazing tricks and even more surprising things, and yes, we are going to look at all of them, but first, the humble beginnings. Now, this is a physics-based game, so to move, these AI agents need to use their joints and produce just the right kind of forces and torque on them to create sophisticated movements and amazing plays. So, let's see. Oof. Unfortunately, we are seeing none of that here. Why? Well, of course, because they haven't had enough time to learn yet. So, are these just the humble beginnings, or is this it? Is this the limit of their AI? Well, not quite. But first, they need to learn to move. How? Well, scientists at DeepMind say by imitating motion capture data. In other words, this tries to copy how real humans move. This is not bad. At least it can now perform some basic movements, so that's great. However, that is not nearly enough Look, it cannot control the ball yet. Not even close. But once again, let's come back 5 days later, and now, can it pull it off? Now, hold on to your papers and, oh yes, yes it can. And with flying colors, it can now follow a moving target, dribble, kick, and so much more. Now, get this, we will put these agents into a training camp for no less than 5 years and see how they do. We started out like this, and now, holy mother of papers, these little AIs can play, and they can do so much more than just moving around. Look, they can do these little tricks where the ball bounces back from an invisible wall, and not only that, but this player tries to pass to the other AI this way, and will they score? Oh yes, fantastic. I have to say, these are now pretty good players. Good job, little AI. However, wait a second. What about the 5 years part? Did scientists at DeepMind have to wait for 5 years on this paper and hope that something good comes out of it? Well, not quite. You see, in real life, 1 second passes exactly in 1 second. That is not new information to anyone. However, if we have a quick computer in a simulation, 1 second in the game can be simulated in a matter of milliseconds in real life, thereby speeding up time itself. Not our time, of course, but the time that the AI lives in. So, this 5-year training camp only took 3 days in real life. That's not that much. Actually, are you thinking what I am thinking?
So you can see now, so just in a few days, by compressing the time and multiplying and having all the large language models, you've got all of those data points coming in, it can learn very quickly. And this is where we're seeing this huge exponential shift. The learning is so fast, and we don't even understand how it's learning to the capacity. I just want to finish this off by showing an article that 60 Minutes followed up on this as well, because I think it really showcases it. A little bit shorter.
The AI program plays thousands of games from which it learns and invents its own tactics.
Here, I think that red player is going to grab it, but instead it just stops it. Hands it back, passes it back, and then goes for the goal.
And the AI figured out how to do that on its own.
That's right, that's right. And it takes a while. At first, all the players just run after the ball together, like a gaggle of, 6-year-olds the first time they're playing ball. Over time, what we start to see is now, what's the strategy? You go after the ball, I'm coming around this way, or we should pass, or I should block while you get to the goal. So we see all of that coordination emerging.
So it really does go to show that we're in this point in time when what we imagine will be achieved in a year has been achieved in a much shorter period of time, but without the full understanding of how that's working through the information. So here you'll see in the Olympics this year how they're using AI to understand the potential of athletes, both actually in the games, but also the potential of those who might make it to the games.
Looking like this, in the moment metrics of distance, degree, rotation. That's what's coming for Paris 2024. The International Olympic Committee rolled out an artificial intelligence plan for the Games, including judging tools.
AI will, of course, help to provide additional information to judges to score in a more informed way. Now, this all has to be done in a way to protect the integrity of the athlete's results.
So important for him to nail this one?
Some athletes believe AI could eliminate judging errors or biases, like Kyle Schufelt. The Canadian won gold in 2004 on the floor and almost won bronze in the vault. But in a controversial decision, a judge gave an opponent who fell a higher score.
If AI would have been used in 2004 in the vault competition, I think I would have won a bronze medal.
Schufelt says AI will add fairness, but there still has to be some heart.
I would be scared if at a competition a bunch of like R2D2s come rolling into the competition and those are your judges. I wouldn't trust that. But when you have a combination of humans and the robotics and the technology, I think that is like a really nice balance.
Ahead of the upcoming Youth Olympics, the IOC used AI to find new talent, future Olympians. It's a seed of encouragement possibly needed in modern times.
With social media now and the way kids operate, if they don't have some sort of instant knowledge, they move on really quickly. If AI helps them to acknowledge that their talent does exist, I think it's hugely beneficial.
While the IOC highlighted the potential benefits of AI, they were clear.
He's got the gold medal!
Artificial intelligence isn't meant to replace athletes.
Gold for Canada!
The humanity of the games will remain untouched.
And she can't see it, now she can!
Sam.
So there we go. So you can start to see there where the enhancement of AI to actually identify potential, the enhancement of areas where there is a need to make a judgment call, or coaching where you can enhance with someone who's perhaps not doing as well by looking at them through a different lens. So we do need to be thinking about augmentation, the sort of the side ref that we have, or the coach that sits alongside us, and how do we tap into that potential to enable the students, the young people or the professionals to know how good they really are and their potential. Because in the end, we cannot give that information in real time as coaches, but they can be doing that when they're augmented by AI. It's also going to be a growth market, and actually wherever you look, there's not a lot of data out there with sports and AI at the moment, but in terms of this exponential graph, you can see there with 2024, it's a $282 million sector, but it's going to be a $2.3 billion sector before too long. So it is a sector that is seen as huge potential. It's seen as ready for investment. It's seen as a place where you want to be focusing your attention and seeing how it might play out for you in the real world. And some of these you may have talked about today a little bit, but these are key areas where AI has really got immediate use in applications. So around talent scouting, game analytics, the training and coaching, predictive modelling, strategy improvement, injury prevention, fan engagement experience, and immersive experiences. So you may just take one piece of this model and say, which of these is the one that makes sense for you in your sport, your code? And actually, how would you test that? How would you run a pilot? How would you engage with your players to see if that could come to life? So I just want to run through a couple of examples of how AI is playing out in other sectors. And so here's just a quick video of Reid Hoffman, who's a well-known commentator in technology and also AI. And here's a video where he has actually created an avatar of himself. So the good-looking one without the stubble on the one side, on the on the far side, is his avatar. The real version with the stubble is himself. He has taken a large language model of all the things he's ever written and said, all his YouTube videos and his podcasts, he's put them into his model, and now he's going to interview himself.
Hello everyone, I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm an AI-generated version of Reid Hoffman, his digital twin. My thinking and everything I am saying comes from a custom GPT that is based on 20 years of Reid talking and making content. So I've read all his books, watched his speeches, and listened to his podcasts. I think it gives me a pretty good sense of how you approach the world, Reid.
So first, I'm going to challenge Reid AI with some questions to see what it can do and how good its content is in mirroring what I might say.
Then the tables will turn and I will challenge you with some questions about AI and tech.
Of course, there's a second question, whether or not I'll answer.
Well, okay, challenge accepted.
Let's get started. Let's take a real piece of work from me, blitzscaling. I wrote a 336-page book. And how do you explain it in one sentence? To a smart person, to a 5-year-old, well, for the Star Trek fans, in Klingon, and as Jerry would explain it in Seinfeld.
Okay, condensing your entire strategy from a 336-page book into one sentence, and starting with the explanation for the smartest person in the world. Blitzscaling is a strategic acceleration of organizational growth to seize market dominance by prioritizing rapid expansion over efficiency, leveraging capital and network effects to outpace competitors in winner-takes-all markets, despite the attendant risks to scalability and operational stability. Now, for a 5-year-old, blitzscaling is like building the biggest tower super fast before anyone else, even if it gets a bit messy, so you can be the leader of the tower game. And now for a Klingon, blitzscaling OH pus vittelheg duj lutar lutavis tohab e doch vam viol.
Right, there we go. If anyone could just translate that for me, that would be useful. So here's another example if you're in marketing and perhaps it's something you want to do to reach a different community. So what I've done here is I have a quarterly briefing on technology. So I've just taken a website URL promoting a quarterly briefing. I've put it into an AI tool and I've said I want it to create a TikTok promotion. I picked this particular guy to front it and I said, can you also do it in Serbian? Pretty straightforward. So within a click, in a couple of seconds, they take all of the information, translate, create the captions and the video, and it's all done by a simple website address. I'll take another version, talking about ChatGPT to an audience, but the audience only spoke Hindi. So I don't speak Hindi as much as I'd like to, so let's just translate it. अपने व्यापार को अगले स्तर तक ले जाने के लिए नवाचारी तरीकों की तलाश में हैं। जनरेटिव एआई आपकी ऑपरेशन में मदद कर सकता है और आपको बदलते बाजार में प्रतिस्पर्धी एज दे सकता है। Perfectly synced. अनुभव को व्यक्तिगत बनाना महत्व। Or a LinkedIn post. 我通常不会对着摄像头说话，但这一周真是不同凡响。OpenAI 宣布推出他们的新 ChatGPT 4.0，彻底重新定义了我们的未来。现在想象对话型 AI 附加式。What can be done now is just moving so fast. And you can start to see you can do the same thing now with just a single image, no video at all. A photo of someone, a script, or a prompt, and they can turn it into a full video with no further information. Now you can start to imagine how this could be misused. And I think we won't have any idea of the misuse until we see the US elections later this year. And the reality is we'll start to see another level of what could be the misuse, the misinformation, the disinformation, the fake aspect. But at the same time, there's a lot of good that's coming out of these tools in terms of accessibility. If I went back to the very beginning when I talked to my AI agent, I could have said the same thing, but said, look, my audience here today only speaks Spanish. Can you please provide your response in Spanish? And so all of that would immediately have come out in Spanish. Or if I was traveling to Japan and I met someone who only spoke Japanese and I don't, I could say something and just say, please repeat everything I say in Japanese, and then come back to me and say the person's response in English. So it's democratizing access for a lot of people. We're also starting to see this chat aspect going into online games. And where it starts online, it will move to the real world. So here's an example of how AI agents or conversational agents are coming into computer games.
And you can ask things like, do you see any problem with my display settings? And then it looks at all your computer settings, all your graphic card settings, and gives you tips accordingly, even charting something like latency for you as it changes the settings. My point, AI assistants are absolutely happening, and they're about to happen now, not in 2025.
So they're bringing in these abilities just to chat away while you're in the gameplay. So if you hear your kids, particularly if you've got sons, talking to people online, in the future they may not be talking to other players, they may be talking to their AI about their gameplay, what should they do next, what's the next strategy, and getting them some help. So I want to just wind up before we have some few questions, just with a little bit more about this conversational AI. So as I mentioned, it's actually coming out first with ChatGPT 4.0. It will be on your mobile phone. It will be free. The timing of that is any time from sort of now to the end of the year. We're not entirely sure. There is no lag, but a number of people are currently using it and posting about the use of it. So they're picking technologists around the world. So I just want to play just a little example here to give you an idea what it means to have a conversational AI that might be your coach, your motivator, your counselor, your advisor. It could be almost any function, and you can move fluidly between these types of roles as you go through your day. So here's a go.
Let me show you, okay? For example, we could just use these AirPods to have the conversation in our ears while we're doing some housework. I can't do that right now because I need to record the audio, but let's just pretend that I am.
So, do you think that it's a bit weird that humans can just have conversations with AI?
It can definitely feel a bit strange at first, but it's becoming more common and accepted. AI can assist with a wide range of tasks and provide valuable insights, making interactions quite beneficial. It's just a new way of using technology to enhance our lives. Ready to hit the road?
You see, everything changes when you don't have to use your hands anymore, when you can just have a normal kind of human conversation, a tireless conversation where this thing isn't going to get tired of all the stupid questions that you're asking. Hey, if I was to ask you to reply in quite short sentences because we're recording, would you be able to do that?
Absolutely, Johnny. I can keep my responses short.
Well, I want to pivot the channel a little bit. I still want to do the Instagram tips. I still want to do those things. I also want to bring in kind of technology, future tech, and AI, for example. To stay passionate about something, you have to love the things you're talking about. You have to be excited about it.
That sounds like a great plan. Mixing Instagram tips with future tech and AI can keep your content fresh and engaging.
I did something that I think most people don't do. I didn't ask it for information. I said to it, what do you want to know about me that you feel that you would find useful to help me? And it, no joke, it just said, right, well, what I need to know is, I need to know what your YouTube channel niche is, what your audience is, what kind of videos they expect. It asked me to tell it what kind of technology I use, like which cameras I use, what editing programs I use, what do I use for my ideas workflow. And at this point I was like, okay, this thing's serious. This thing understands all of the things that go into making a YouTube video. And this is when I realized that this is not a party trick. This is not something that is kind of just like finding tips on the internet and then just spitting them at you. This understood how my workflow is exactly. Then I spent the next sort of 20 minutes coming up with a script while I was cleaning. And this script, it wasn't like I said to it, give me a script. I told it what the video was about. I told it what the sections were going to be about. And when it would then come back to me with an idea, I said, no, that's not really what I mean. It's about this and it's about that. And I was basically doing what I do in my own head. And then it formatted this script for me. And I said, well, what are we going to do with this now? And it said, I'll tell you what, I will format this, put it at the bottom. You can copy and paste that into Notion. And I was like, what? It remembers that I use Notion. Yeah, wild. This thing's wild. And I don't think that I've even figured out how powerful this thing is. And I don't think I'll figure out how powerful it is as fast as it gets better. I can't believe there's people walking about out there, just walking about, and they don't know that this is happening.
So where are we as a country on this AI journey? At the moment, it's fair to say we are sitting at the back row. So we're up there with Morocco, Belarus, Pakistan, Uganda, Senegal, in terms of our readiness. So we are sitting quite dormantly waiting to see, and I think this is part of the reason the conversations are just not moving fast enough. We're sitting as though somebody will inform us what our guardrails will be, what rules there should be of engagement, how we should use this. And so when you start looking across the world and AI strategies, most nations have well-advanced strategies going back quite a few years. And I think this is really a call to action, a call to arms that all of us need to not wait to see what it might be at a government level or a local level or a board level, but individually start playing. Because it's only through experimentation with these tools that you'll start to understand how they may be useful to you, and how actually there may be things that you're doing right now that take a huge amount of time and energy that literally could be done in seconds by a very simple prompt. So I call you to think about how do we somehow decouple the past. Imagine this world. Imagine being a 12-year-old growing up right now with all the things that they are dealing with. The technologies at their disposal, the things they're experimenting with, the online world they're in, the social connections, the communities, and imagine what that's like. Because it's only through imagining what they are experiencing we'll start to imagine what the future does look like. It's not from what we learnt looking back. It's all about looking forward into the future. I would also recommend you use these 4 prompts yourself to change the way you think about what you do. What would you raise if you were truly to respond to the future? What things would you do more of? What would you eliminate? The things you would not do anymore because it's no longer fit for purpose or it's run its course. What would you create? What would you test? What would you experiment with? What would you pilot? So that you're stepping into that space one small baby step at a time with the view that along the journey you'll learn and discover. And what would you reduce? The things you would do less of, so that actually you've got the capacity to do more new things. It's not really the end. But it is the end of my talk, but I've got maybe a time for 2 questions. 1? maybe, if there's any questions.
Can I just ask Bob? Bob, can you put the mic up, please? Thank you.
There's a question down here.
Does anybody have a question? Oh, yes, we've got lots. Bob, can you put the mic up, please? Thank you. Oh, another one. Sorry.
I'll paraphrase back.
So at the moment, I understand that there's a lag in terms of all this scraping, like it doesn't know like what was invented from the web yesterday. For example, last week I was trying to figure out if our men's doubles team is going to make it to the Olympics. I asked the ChatGPT to grab me the June 10th rankings, and it couldn't because it didn't have the most recent data. So I went and scraped it, shoved it in, and it did tabulation for me. But how is that gap closing? Like, will there be a moment when actually it's got yesterday's data there for us?
Okay, so did everyone get that question? Yeah. So now at the moment, if you're using ChatGPT, it's an enormous model. It's not specialised at all. So most people now are starting to create their own GPTs. So even within ChatGPT, you can actually go in and create a GPT. So you put all of your information, obviously anonymise it, don't put anything secretive. But if you've got things that you want to use, you've got information on your organisation, it's all accessible on a website, maybe there's other things, promotional things, you create your own language model and then you start asking questions from that. So if you've got news feeds coming in, it would go into your GPT, then it would give you that immediately. To create your own GPT through something like ChatGPT takes minutes. It's just, again, you need to know how to do it. But also companies, of course, are creating their own large language models. They're partnering with maybe a Microsoft, or they might be doing it with a Google, that whatever type, depending on which vendors they use and what enterprises systems they have. But it's about personalisation. So you may, as Sport New Zealand, may just create its own GPTs. Everybody puts their data into one large language model, and you can keep updating it, and it would be able to pull through at any time that information. Google is moving more and more to becoming a generative type of search. You see now it's starting to test. Some people will see the view that it has the normal Google search, and now it has a generative AI search underneath it. That future model is Google doesn't have a future, because right now it's so skewed towards AdWords and promotion of information that's not giving you the answers you really need. So if I said, I want to know how to grow sunflowers, I'm going to get 5 different companies like King's Plant Barn before I even get close to getting how do I grow sunflowers. A generative AI will tell me exactly how to grow a sunflower without having to go through promotion. So we're shifting the way we access information on the fly, but every one of the tech giants has to win this. Because if they don't, there is actually no future for them, because this is the only place the technology sector is going to play into the future. So it's a big race.
Francis, I wish we had time for more questions, but I just wonder whether we finish on something that's general for everybody in the room. You've got all sorts of levels of within organisations sitting in this room, whether it's sport, play, and if we haven't used AI, if we haven't used ChatGPT, or you're kind of only just dabbling into it, I wonder whether you can give everybody in the room a place to start.
Absolutely. So go to OpenAI. If you haven't used ChatGPT yet, go and use the 4.0 version. So you get a little drop down on it. So 3.5 is free, 4.0 is free. So either one of those, but 4.0 is the most recent one. The biggest thing you need to understand is the prompt. Now, a prompt is the question. Your question should be as detailed as you can possibly make it. So if you said, I want to sail from Auckland to Fiji, what time of year should I travel? If that's all you need to know, you're going to get an answer and might say June. But if you want to know what the conditions and what you should think about, you'd need to say, this is the size of my boat, this is the size of my crew, these are the limitations I have, this is the navigational tools I have. These are what I want to do. This is how long I want to go. And I also want to know that when you respond to me, I want it in language that my children can understand because they're coming with me. Tell it exactly what you want, and then you'll get amazing responses. It is only as clever as what you ask it. And I think a lot of people got disillusioned by it early on because it felt like it gave really rudimentary, sort of generic responses. So look at the prompts and really explore. So I would normally do about 2 paragraphs per prompt. Now, obviously, once you get to conversation, you won't have to be a great typist. You'll have to ask it, and it goes straight into your language model on your computer, so you can just copy and paste it if you want to, or you can just ask those questions.
incredible technology and an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Francis, for giving us a healthy slap of reality when it comes to AI, but also giving us a healthy dose of optimism and places, opportunities for where we can use this technology within Sport Rec. Brent Robinson, Group Manager for Sector Engagement, Marketing and Communications for Sport NZ, would love to present you with a gift to say thank you. Thank you again, Francis. Okay, we're running a little bit behind. We're supposed to be back in this room by 3 o'clock. So let's make it 10 past 3, ready to go for our final 2 keynote speakers for this afternoon. So go out, have a cup of tea, quick break, conversation, and I'll see you back in here shortly. Kia ora tātou.